good afternoon, and welcome to our first United MUFON Facebook live event. I'm so pleased you can be here with us today. We have an exciting and informative meeting planned with a very special guest speaker, John Schuessler. He's a MUFON original and a man with a panoply of interests and a wide range of impressive history in the aerospace industry. Also joining me today is MUFON's podcast founder and board of director, Richard Beckwith. He's here to kick off this fantastic afternoon with me. So, as many of you may know, I decided to have MUFON meetings available to anyone interested since we began dealing with the horrid pandemic. Many people couldn't get out of their homes, they couldn't get to a live meeting, so I started doing this, and here I am today in 2022. I began these meetings, like I said, back in 2020, and I've enjoyed interviewing MUFON volunteers and state directors so as to make known to everybody who we are here at MUFON and what we do. And how we do it, actually. So let's get started. Who are we? We are MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, established in 1969. And what we do and who we are, we're the largest and oldest UFO investigative organization in the world, with a huge member base adding to it daily, represented in all 50 states and 40 countries, with thousands of trained volunteer field investigators, and they're changing all the time. Over 50 PhD consultants in most disciplines, and we do conduct scientific investigations of the UFO phenomenon, while others are just UFO reporting agencies. Like I said, we were established in '69, and for the past 52 years, MUFON has compiled a database of over 175,000 UFO reports. Our CMS, known to us within MUFON as the Case Management System, was developed in 2006. And as MUFON has evolved, we now monitor abductions as well as entity cases. Those are just some of our fun facts. So how do we investigate? What's it all about? Well, our scientific method consists of computer sciences, biology, astronomy, physics, chemistry, geology, engineering, and different stats that we go through. So that's how we do what we do. And we are the scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity. That's our mission statement, and we believe it. We investigate UFO sightings and abductions and entity cases, and we promote research of UFOs, always with an eye toward science. And we educate the public on the UFO phenomenon, which is pretty much what we're doing today. We do have a board of directors. David McDonald is our executive director. John Schuessler, our founding member, and so proud to have him with us today. Also Tom Whitmore, myself, Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Rob Swiatek, Richard Beckwith, who's also with us today, and Sandy Clevin. So, of all of those UFO reports that have been received, approximately 15% of those are going to be real. The others are sometimes misidentifications, optical illusions, stars, planets, hoaxes, and even some hallucinations. But what about those remaining 15%? You know, that's what brought me personally to MUFON, and that's the reason for MUFON's existence. We want to be here. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to hear your story. You're not alone, and no experience could ever be too bizarre. We mean that. If you do have something you'd like to report to us, no matter when it's been, 20, 30, 40 years ago, or last night, report your experience to MUFON.com. We'd love to hear from you. We do have an experiencers resource team, which does help with those that have had alien contact but are going through some issues with what has happened to them. So confidentially, we do work with you. Please go to MUFON.com/experiencer questionnaire.html. And our director is Gwen Farrell. We've got a little bit of MUFON business here for us to talk about. And the first thing, the best thing, is our Denver MUFON Symposium. And that's coming up July the 8th through the 10th, so please save that date. And we will have the UFOs in the Spotlight as our major theme this year. So that's the 22 MUFON International Symposium. Register today at MUFON.com. Our speakers, that we'd like to spotlight for a moment are Cheryl Jones, Peter Robbins, Michael Schratt, Kathleen Martin, Tom Reed, Paul and Joe Hynek, Peter Davenport, Dave Scott, Craig Campobasso, Donald Schmidt, and Ron James, Mr. MUFON TV. So go to MUFONsymposium.com and register for July 8th through the 10th. Now, we're also putting out a call for submissions. Who? The MUFON field investigators or directors or international directors or any of our members. What we're looking for is we would like to welcome article submissions about case investigations, case analysis, international cases, and historical research on sightings or any related phenomenon. So if you would like to submit to the journal and see your publication in our journal, reach out to journaleditor@mufon.com for consideration. Thank you. And we've got a new What's Up with Katie Grabowski, Chris DiPerno, Katie Cook. They are on the MUFON What's Up. It's not actually an app. Some people have asked me, is that an app? No, it's on Facebook, so you can join them weekly on Facebook on their new podcast. And of course, our official MUFON podcast, and that is presented by Richard Beckwith, and that is at www.mufon.com. He has a wonderful updated format and very interesting subject matter each month to discuss, so please join him with that, and he can talk about that a little bit later if he'd like to. So, I've mentioned this many times. The Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, has now moved back to Ohio in Cincinnati, and we are currently at the Cincinnati Lunken Airport. That's a mouthful. And we will be moving to right behind the airport very soon, and I'll keep you abreast of all that information as it comes forth. Project Aquarius. You've heard me mention this many times in the past, but this is the reaching out to other organizations to join with MUFON in the development of the largest repository of translatable and accessible UAP data in the world. And we're looking for donations and people to, support us at MUFON.com and be a part of this wonderful, groundbreaking project, because we can now digitize and assimilate the files of CUFOS and NICAP, which, when combined with the Pandora and Stringfield data files, will constitute the most amazing assembly of researchable UAP data ever developed, and vast amounts of data exist, believe me. With our friends in Europe and South America, this will just be fantastic. So please jump in and support us at MUFON.com. As MUFON's Director of Membership, I would like to invite you to join MUFON today if you haven't already. If you do join, you will get, or you can choose to get, an electronic or hard copy monthly journal. They consist of articles by leading ufologists, UFO sighting reports, abduction cases, mutilations, and crop circles, just to name a few. Also, our symposium information is in there, and anything else that is important to ufology. It's really a treasure trove. And you can get that journal for $59.88 for a whole year. Just log on to MUFON.com. The one thing, though, that you can also do is upgrade to get the MUFON TV, and that's for $119.88 for the enhanced e-journal and MUFON TV. So if you go to MUFON.com, you can click and choose from the many options that we have to join. We even have a $9.99 a month value for you. And then we're also doing a VIP box, and this is a very special yearly fee that you would pay, but you get the hard copy journal and the electronic, as well as the VIP special if you're overseas. And it comes with hats, with teas and books and different things from the MUFON store. And then you'll also get your hard copy of your journal and your electronic copy. So all of this is in that VIP box, and that seems to be pretty special this year. We've had a lot of sales of those, and that does include now your live stream MUFON Symposium. So if you can't get to the symposium, you can definitely have it live streamed right into your home, either with the $119.88 for the whole year, or the VIP box. Your choice, but do join us. Now, if you'd like to become a field investigator and join our certified investigative team, you would first go to MUFON.com and click Join. That's separate from getting in on some of the other things that we have here, so I want to point that out. This would be to join MUFON as a field investigator. You would need to be a member first. So you join as a member, and then you would join as contacting your state director, and you would sign up to take your online training for your test. We do have an exam that you take. It's an orientation program that we put you through, and there is a background check involved in that. And then we mentor you with a licensed and experienced MUFON FI before attempting to send you out on your own investigations. So it's really a lot of fun, and trust me when I tell you, you'll never be the same. This is really serving humanity in the most amazing way. So please join us today. Now available at the MUFON store, check out my line of I Know tees. They're now there at the MUFON store for you. And we have quality and value for everyone in our stores with sweatshirts, go bags, MUFON tees, pens, hats, coffee mugs, headlamps, masks, and zippered portfolios, just to name a few of these items. And every one of them are emblazoned with the MUFON logo. So just go to MUFON.com and choose online store. Well, that time has finally come. Today's presentation topic is John Schuessler. And John is currently an aerospace consultant, and in May of 1998, after 36 years of service to the U.S. Human Space Flight Program, he retired from his position of Director of General Services for the Boeing Company. Earlier positions were the Director of Engineering and Project Manager for Space Shuttle Flight Operations for McDonnell Douglas in Houston. He was Program Manager for the design and construction of the NASA Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, and in 1997 he received the NASA Public Service Medal for his leadership on that project. He earned a Master of Science degree in Studies of the Future, Technology Forecasting, from the University of Houston. He is a founding member of the Mutual UFO Network, and he's also an administrator for the MUFON Medical Committee and a member of the UFO Research Coalition Board of Directors. He has authored more than 100 technical papers, articles, and book chapters. He is the author of 2 books, UFO-Related Human Physiology Effects and The Cash Landrum UFO Incident. He served on the IEEE Aerospace Policy Committee in Washington, D.C. since 1992. He is an associate fellow in the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics and a member of the Society for Scientific Exploration and the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and the Armed Forces Communications and Electronics Association. John currently resides in Littleton, Colorado, with his wife Kathy and their family. Please join me in welcoming John Schuessler and Richard Beckwith. Hi, guys.
Hello.
So good to have you here.
Thank you. That's my dog. Sorry.
Okay, hello, dog. Well, that was a very impressive resume, John, I must say. That was amazing. And you are certainly well-versed in all things electronic and advancements of sciences. Good Lord, aeronautics and astronautics fields. That's amazing.
Yeah, the good part is I've now retired.
Yeah, I can see why. You had a full plate your whole life. You've been very busy. So
John, you really wanted to be an astronaut, didn't you?
Oh, I never wanted to be an astronaut. No.
Oh, gosh.
You didn't? You had the qualifications, I think.
No, physically I wouldn't be any good for being an astronaut. The good part is that I got to beat them and figure out why it's so important to our nation and the world. So it was an inspiration.
Well, that's the truth, isn't it? So you've been doing MUFON since 1969, along with everything else that you were doing. That's impressive, and you're also an author of 2 books, and you're a beloved speaker around the country. We've just sat, enthralled at your MUFON presentations, and I was always so glad when they went over, because it was like, yeah, keep talking, keep talking. Of course, I think you were getting tired up there after 2 hours, but it was wonderful. So how did you ever really get involved in all of this UFO stuff? I mean, with your background.
Well, everyone asks that of everyone that does get involved, and it's not an easy thing to say. I guess I really got hooked when I started to work in the space field, because, you think you're building the latest, greatest thing when you build a spacecraft, and you find out later it was very primitive. But nevertheless, we had the ego of feeling that we could answer all these UFO questions, right away. And then the first time I tried, I figured out, no, I really can't. And that came home to roost after I met Walt Andrus. In 1966, Walt came to my home. Him and his wife met with Kathy and I. And just a week before that, an airline pilot in Missouri, Ozark Airlines, had a sighting over Kirksville, Missouri. And Walt said, we need to get together with this man and show that we have technical interest in this. And so Captain Don Lochner of Ozark did meet with us, and we supported him on an on-air interview on a station in St. Louis. I don't remember the name now, but that was the first time I got exposed to interviews. And that was kind of a shock, I must admit. But nevertheless, Captain Lochner was so honest about it, so believable. Well, I said, whoa, I'm not going to joke about this anymore. I'm going to look for the technology. At that point on, I've been chasing technology. I love it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, you lived through the worst of the giggle factor with ufology, I think. Those first years were horrible. Everybody was laughing about it, But you had interactions with NASA and the Apollo crew, right? Did you actually meet some of those people and get involved in some of that?
Well, you got to say interactions. MUFON didn't have interactions. People personally did, and
Right.
The things they did were personally done. But meeting the astronauts that had sightings, there were very few that wanted to talk about it because, it was a negative subject. And I could not understand why. Fortunately, I met enough people that it was very obvious that we can talk about this. And as long as we're doing it honestly and not trying to torpedo somebody, it's not a political issue. It's a technical, scientific, human issue. And the lunar astronaut that I got to work closely with through the National Institute of Discovery Science Board was so easy to understand, so easy to talk to, so easy to interchange technical stuff with, that it was very encouraging. And others didn't really want to get mixed up, but they were supportive. And as a result, after I moved to Houston, I was able to talk to hundreds of other employees that really was interested, and talked to every technical society that we had around the Space Center, from the IEEE, AIAA, you name it. And those people were interested in the technology also. And so I lost interest in the poo-pooing of it and took on interest at every turn to come up with technology. And believe you me, there's plenty of it behind this. Anybody that thinks there isn't, they're way off in left field. They're the ones that should be poo-pooed now.
John, I have to ask you, why did you become interested in this phenomenon? Why, and when? And was there a moment where you said to yourself, whoa, this is real. There's something here.
Well, that wasn't my starting place. Wasn't that in 1948, I was with my parents in the car between Springfield and Decatur, Illinois, right by the big World War II munitions plant at Illiopolis. And we were driving along on a beautiful day, and I was in the back seat, and I told my parents, "There's something out there. What's that big thing?" It was just a big glowing ball, but it was about a half mile away. And I determined that by going back when I became an adult and actually measured it. And was able to do that because there was a barn in the distance that it passed. It was about a half mile from us. It went straight forward past us. My parents both watched it and exclaimed about it. And then it suddenly turned, made a sharp right turn and went west. And I thought, wow, that's neat. So I went home, talked to a couple of kids at school about it. They all poo-pooed me. And I said, okay, it doesn't matter to me. After I joined the Naval Air Reserve, I got to meet several people that reinforced this. And then when I was, a radio announcer in St. Louis asked me to speak to the seniors group at his church, a very large church in St. Louis. And so I did that. When they asked me that same question, I explained it that same way. And the pastor's wife literally screamed. And what did I do? Did I step on toes? I said, no, it's not that at all. My mother saw the same thing and told us about it, and we laughed at her, and we never got to tell her that we believed her.
Oh.
And to me, that was a turning moment, besides all the others that you run into.
So in all this work that you did at NASA, you carried that experience with you. You knew that there was something out there that certainly at least folks at NASA should be aware of based upon their aerospace and work and so forth.
NASA, but aerospace in general. I was working for McDonnell Douglas at the time, which later turned into be Boeing, and continued that. But at NASA, the upper management always had the goal of pay attention to the work you're doing, focus. If you're going to the moon, if you're going to launch, you're going to whatever, devote all your time to that. And when I worked there, I did the same thing, but in my off hours, I did the other things. And that was a nice thing to be able to do. At first, I was a little afraid because my manager told me, you do that, you'll probably get fired. Well, it wasn't the case. Mr. McDonnell at McDonnell Douglas was really into paranormal, and he financed lots of big studies. And he introduced me to several people that were really in the know about UFOs and wanted this kind of information. And I've carried those friendships with me from that day forward. And that was like way back in first of the Skylab program. And, everybody says, well, MUFON's given the information to the government. That's such a baloney statement. You don't give it to governments. You don't give it to people. You actually are doing technology work, and it goes into the big database of all technology in the world. And what I learned very early on, all these people you're working with, regardless if they're the person that's delivering your bread or your counterpart in the government, they're all just people, and they're nice people. And a lot of them have joined MUFON in the past, like police officers and the like. And you just could be amazed how great it is to be able to interchange freely and openly and bring the technology forward. And that's what we're all trying to do. That's why I got the extra education I did. That's why I formed the UFO study groups and worked with them, was because of this.
That's amazing.
It's fun, it's serious, and it affects the future of the world.
You know, in 1967, there was a book that preceded the MUFON Journal. It was called Skylook. And I think it was Rosetta Holmes, maybe she was the second person, Norma Short. Had you ever made a report to either of them for that Skylook magazine back in the day about your experience?
Constantly, about all of the things going on. Norma Short was a volunteer person. She was a gloriously nice person and did this Skylook out of the goodness of her heart and wanting to do something. And Rosie Holmes was one of the people in the St. Louis area that hosted picnics and sky watches and things like that on a yearly basis, just in support of MUFON. And she had a glorious career in doing this, very wonderfully nice. And something all these people have in general is that their families support them. They're not embarrassed by them. They understand what is going on. And usually, like in my family, all my family has been very supportive. My wife, of course, has done an unbelievable amount of copying tapes down, transcripts and the like, and connecting with people. And I'm sure when she started, she didn't have any idea that's where it would go. But then now my daughter is MUFON journal editor, and it just goes on and on. But
and a good
this
one.
This is an exciting field to be in, and these new developments that Dave McDonald, our executive director, is following with the government. They recognize that MUFON is the one that has to train people. They recognize that it's not classified, though. I'll give you an idea that we're doing anything classified. We haven't. What we do, though, is provide investigators that are so capable compared to what has ever been done in history before. The poor Air Force really got a bad trip out of a lot of their investigations because they didn't train their security people to be UFO investigators. They just trained them to get the bad guys coming out of World War II, and that was the right thing. But once that happened and they were no longer doing, and MUFON took over, and Walt said, we got to have an investigative committee. We got to train train investigators. We got to publish this and share it. And I don't know how he did it for so many years, because it is a rough job, believe me.
Well, he sure did start something, didn't he, John?
He certainly did, and he kept it going until it had its own motor to run on. And that motor is all of these wonderful people out there that volunteer to do the work. And they're from every walk of life, every background, every country, every religion. It's not narrowed down to one thing. You got to do this only. That was where some of the early groups failed, because you can only do something with them. And we don't do it that way. We share it.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And it is something that should be shared with humanity, isn't it, John?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't want to do it if we couldn't do that.
I have another question for you, and
Okay.
and just shut me down. Tell me to shut up if I go beyond Thunderdome here. But in all your years in doing this, in your work at NASA, and your consulting work, and there's a lot of things out there I know that aren't publicly available, but in all your years, have you ever held something in your hands that you knew or thought might have come from another civilization, either a piece of technology or a piece of material? Have you ever seen anything or held anything like that in your hands that you said to yourself, wow, this could have come from a different star system?
Several times over the years, I have been handed material that I thought may have been extraterrestrial. I couldn't prove it, but we did have some luck at that. We had, going back to one that was almost an old wives' tale, was the Aurora, Texas 1897 incident. Walt Andrus got interested in that because we had an investigator in Dallas that was a radio personality, and he stimulated this. Excuse me. And what happened was we found dozens of people that were still alive. And we had the interviews, we had the locations, we had a team digging out the material that was supposedly found there. And Walt sent this to 7 different laboratories, I think it was at the time. He gave me one, and I had one of my friends who was an aerospace failure analysis person that could look at a piece of material and know how to analyze it to blow it up, look at the structure, measure the constituents of it. And at first he thought maybe I was being silly, but when he started running this through the various tests, he said, "Ooh, this is different." He said, "I'm getting almost pure material here with some minor inclusions of something else." And that's not what we're able to make right now in that early time in our space program or our manufacturing programs. You made that kind of material in the laboratory for laboratory work only, and you don't find it out in the field. And when we looked at this piece of material under the photomicrographs and the various other analyses, we found that the external surface of it had all the constituents of the soil constituents where it was picked up. It had all of the purities once opened up. And I don't want to lead you on to think of this as the most marvelous thing ever. There's a lot better things right now, I believe. But nevertheless, that was very stimulating technologically, and it was very good for other people. Now, you say, well, that guy may have faked it. Well, one of the TV programs that I think Bill Burns stimulated had their person come to Houston, contract a laboratory that does material analysis for NASA, and keeping this in close control so we didn't have any missing time on the sample still. They ran the analysis not knowing what we had found before, and it came up with exactly the same analysis that we had originally in my friend's aerospace lab. And so that was a good thing for me to have, even if nobody else cared. And
well, and it must be hard to listen to people when they say, well, nobody's ever had any pieces of these things, or we all know that that's not true.
Well, and also we don't. How can we say we know it's not true? We know that it has happened. We know, but you got to have a bigger proof of it out there for the scientific community to accept, for the world to accept. And I've had it awful recently. Could recover that piece of material, and the equipment has been maintained on it. We can get a new kind of test that they do now that they didn't do way back then. And so I don't know if that's necessary, because MUFON now has this soil analysis field lab
capabilities.
Yeah, right. That I just heard about it actually. But that we can do ourselves, MUFON can. And that is such a great thing, because we've had these people doing lab work for us, but now we can supply that kind of equipment to test it. I'm much more interested in testing a piece of material today that we get fresh and comes from a site where an incident has taken place. Others that have been done, we had a number of them sent to us in our UFO group in Houston. And you can't prove anything. That's the problem. Everybody said, well, you faked it. No matter what you do, no matter how you video it, when you're doing it, no matter what, have witnesses monitoring what you're doing. And there's always this other whole large community out there that says, that's not true. You guys are just making money off of it, or some other dumb statement. So, that frustrates all of us. But nevertheless, it works. And we should be doing this for aerospace companies or shipping companies, NASA, or anybody else, because we know what we're doing, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. So get out there and do the work and quit making excuses, is what I always tell these people.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Gosh, I wish we still had our hands on that particular piece to look at the MUFON lab. But we have other things that we can look at.
Well, Teri, don't you think it's important for people to understand that this is the study of a real phenomenon?
Yes.
And John is one of those folks that brought that to the forefront, to get us to, as the public, to understand that, and that knowledge in the public just continues to increase every day. And John was one of the forerunners that said, "Look, we need to take a look at this phenomenon," and here we are today, doing just exactly that. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead, John.
Can I step back one step on that? We have had a treasure trove person in MUFON that looked into trace analysis of pieces of material, whether it was grass, dirt, or whatever. Ted Phillips. Ted Phillips is no longer with us, but he was a gem. I mean, he was really a gem. Kathy and I met Ted and his wife Ginger way back in the early 70s, and he was consistently honest and hardworking this whole time. And MUFON has actually published, along with others, list of all his materials and stuff that he collected. And he worked a lot with Dr. J. Allen Hynek of CUFOS. So, he kept the heart going of be real, be honest, keep pushing, and look into that if you want to see some other things with the people out there.
Yeah, it's so much more than an honor to be working with you on the board today. Let me tell you, your tenacity, hanging in there, going through all that you went through with the negativity and all of that all along, and still being who you are today and being so appreciated by so many. I just want to say that to you. I know you're very humble, but, we all are behind you, and it's because of you many of us are here, so thank you.
John, before you step in there and say something really humble, I have to say that for me, serving on the board with you has been one of the great honors of my life. I've considered myself to be just a normal, everyday person, and for me to be able to serve on the same business board as you on the MUFON board has just been really, honestly, one of the great honors of my life.
Well, I feel the same way back at you and all these other people I've been working with. You'd be surprised how humbling it is when you see how many people are really doing good things and not even being rewarded for it, but recognized for it. And so I always say, from the person that does the one smallest wonderful thing, that is the grain of sand that the ant pushes up the hill to make the mountain. And MUFON has been so lucky to have those kind of people. You mentioned several names already, but it just goes on and on. There's no end to the list of heroes, of the thousands and thousands of people that MUFON has done. But what humbles you the most is you meet somebody that is really impacted by having an experience. And that's one reason I pursued the Cash Lanham case. Experience that is detrimental to their families, detrimental to their health, detrimental to their future, their jobs. And if you can't be honest and help them, then you shouldn't be in any business. And debunking is just so ridiculous. When I first met Betty Cash, I met her when she got out of the hospital the first time. And I almost wept. In fact, it was so bad that her mother was taking care of her at her brother's apartment, and she came out of the back room very ill, obviously. And she said, I don't know what to do, but I'm glad that MUFON is willing to talk to us. So, of course we are. And I embarrassed myself by saying, well, what happened to you? She said, well, I was burned, my hair fell out, and all these things. And I said, well, your hair doesn't look that bad. She said, I got a wig on. And from that point on, I thought, my goodness. So we had seven investigators in Houston that band together. We called it Project Visit just to keep it pure. And those people all did this kind of work with the various others. And we found a treasure trove of scary things, how their health decreased over time. And MUFON had a doctor in a hospital in Madison, Wisconsin, who tossed his hat in the ring to help us know what to look for, what to ask, what to record. And he did good things by doing that because it helped save other people, I do believe, from going through the same thing. I said to Betty, I said, if you're honest with me, give me access to all of your friends, anybody that I want to talk to, and our team, and we will stick with you throughout. And that's exactly what we did. I talked after we recorded all this information. I talked with one or two of them every week or so for 2 or 3, 4 years, and then every month. And until Betty's passing, 18 years to the day of when it happened. And that was a freak situation too. So it's not a thing where you should be scared, but you should look forward because the families are not going to want to,
Mm-hmm.
We had a MUFON person in Missouri that was an investigator that was exposed to a UFO. And I would like to have been able to do a lot more for him, but you don't interrupt the families.
Yeah.
It's
Interesting
just
stuff.
we've got to help people. You can't just, and it's not a monetary thing. It's
No.
a human thing.
It's a passion to want to help them understand what we know and what we understand, get them
Well, that's
through
why
it. Mm-hmm.
we at MUFON have recorded all this stuff in the different documents we put forth and all the books and all the reports and technical reports our members and our consultants and the people who work close to us and other organizations have put out. It's a treasure trove of scientific, technical information
Right.
that just lays there once it's recorded. And we need people to realize it's there and to use it. And that's why I'm really heartened by the new things that MUFON is doing to make totally broadly available to the public, as long as they join up and have access to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not done to embarrass anybody, I guess is the way to put it. It's done to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone doesn't want help, that's okay too.
Yeah,
You have
right.
to remember that.
Right.
You can't force help on persons.
Well, let me ask you this. I think, Rich, did you have a question too? Let me ask him this one real quick. After all these years, and you were a futurologist, and you've held so many titles, impressive titles. Why do you think, personally, John, these extraterrestrials are coming here? We know beyond any shadow of really any doubt that they're here. We've seen the crafts, and we have thousands upon thousands of witness testimonies that prove that, and experiences that prove that. I have my thoughts, but what are your thoughts on that? Why do you think they're coming here?
Well, I've been doing one other thing in my retirement years here. I've been looking into all of the things that have developed in space. Say, way back when the scientists were all saying there are no other planets, just our solar system. Well, we got smarter. We found Bernard's star, and we determined that by the wiggle in the orbit of something going around. And so we knew there was a planet out there. And that went on for a while, still poo-pooing planets. And then suddenly somebody comes up, well, hey, there must be 200 or 300 more. And once that door opened, it has gone crazy. And even NASA says today, I think there's a new, I don't know, it's a press release or just a story out of NASA though, that probably 500,000 other planets or something. Well, that's nothing compared to what there must be out there.
Right.
And the only exception that has held investigators and scientists back is the distance and the way to travel it. And one of the things that got me interested in space also was the early person that said that, well, we know how to travel, but we can't do what they do. So what about wormholes? I know several friends have done wormhole research as a result too, and others. We still don't know what it is, but there may be parallel universes, there may be whatever, and just because we can't do it and don't understand it fully, doesn't mean it isn't there.
That's
And
right.
Amy Lowe just recently came out as a scientist that talks about these things. And, there's really some good work going on. Uh, if it's threatening to people, they can leave it alone.
Right.
Everybody doesn't have to buy into any subject.
Mm-hmm.
John,
Well,
I have a question to ask you. Is it in your mind the UFO phenomenon? Is that just attributable to extraterrestrials, or are you along the thoughts of Jacques Vallée that there are other things that could be an explanation for the UFO phenomenon? He talks about parallel realities. Perhaps we're part of some larger psychological experiment. What do you think about that stuff?
I think that we'd be silly to ignore any uh, other things just because we don't understand them. I know Jock well. I admired him from the early days when I met him and worked with him closely and still consider him one of the top guys around. And several other people he works with too are the same way. So uh, I would never say never on any of this stuff till we get smart enough to be able to do it.
mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a good
I appreciate that.
thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't pretend to know what the phenomenon is if we don't know what the phenomenon is. It's really easy to say, well, it's little guys coming from a planet in Zeta Reticuli. We've heard that rumor, but is that just what it is? And is it just these little guys from Zeta Reticuli? Maybe, because there's all these different facets to the UFO phenomenon. All these sort of high strangeness aspects to it, things hopping from one place to another, people getting thoughts in their head, disappearing for, so you're talking about time travel and all these sorts of things, and how is that just simply explained by little guys getting into basically a spaceship and flying from one star system to another? There's just all these other facets to it that just can't be explained, but just simply by that.
You're absolutely correct. And that's why it's so exciting. Every day there's something new to learn. And, in the space program, we go back to that. Every day we learn something new.
Mm-hmm.
When we first started out, we were told that by some scientists that when we landed on the moon, the landing craft would sink into this deep mass of goo on the surface. And it didn't. We landed on it very nicely, and we took off.
Thank God.
And we drove around on it.
Yeah, that would have been a crazy first step. It would have kept on going. Well,
what do you think, John, about the notion of looking for alien artifacts out in the solar system? I think Avi Loeb, I think that was the scientist you were alluding to a little while ago, and his project Galileo. What do you think about the idea of looking for alien artifacts? And in that, do you think maybe we've already found some?
Oh, that's a loaded question, but yes.
Sure was.
I'm sorry.
I'm definitely interested in the idea of looking for alien artifacts out there. Again, he's a good scientist, and he's not just looking at what he already knows and already established his career on. He's looking at what the next step is, and that's what MUFON's doing UFO-wise, and looking for the next step.
Right.
We don't have all the answers, no, but we certainly have a solid base of information to work from. And the technical data is what I liked, and that's why I pushed that side of it, because that's something I understand. I gave a talk to a group in St. Louis, citizens group, And I was telling them how we wouldn't fly the spacecraft and how we'd land and all these things. And she said, well, yeah, that's all good. Why aren't you just spending your time curing cancer for the kids? And I said, that's an excellent question. If I was qualified, that would be what I would do. And my family has supported the research on child illnesses and the children's hospitals. My granddaughters and daughters have dance studios, have raised funds for the children's hospital here in Denver. My heart goes out to every sick child and sick individual, but we're going to have to use science to do that, not politics or not wishing. So that's the same with space, same with extraterrestrial life. But people are going to look back on us and say, we were really neophytes. We didn't have any idea of how intense this really is. And you say, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you to the people that do the work.
Yes, amen. That's the truth, isn't it? It's not easy. It's hard work. I did want to ask you, other than the Cash Landrum case, was there any other cases that initially drew your interest throughout the years?
Oh, yeah, lots and lots and lots of them. I worked with Dr. Leo Sprinkle a lot on what he had done and developing what I was interested in on the material. Mm-hmm. He was very helpful in everything. Whenever we had a case that we wanted to look at, he would hop in there and he would speak at our symposiums and share the data. And he was a great guy. And, we've had several people like that are so impressive with their stick-to-itiveness to do the work in spite of the naysayers, and in spite of the lack of funds, and in spite of all these other things. COVID has been a massive impact on society and on people, on technology and health. And on the opposite side, we've done better in MUFON because people have time to look now. But that, all these things impact us. And it impacts people. And no one knows what each individual MUFON member is going through each day. And they say, well, why did you quit? Or why did you do this? And you shouldn't say that. You should say thank you for all the wonderful little things you've done that have mounted up into big things. And they're really getting big now.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Absolutely, thank you. You've written that other book, UFO-related human physiological effects. Tell us a little bit about that. What was that all about?
Well, that was a book of frustration. What I got out of the Cash Landrum case, I looked at every field, every report I could find to see where there's other things that are similar or different, or what the differences are, how you take them apart and put them together. And so I thought, well, why don't I put that down in just a catalog form? It's a catalog. It's not an interesting reading book. It's a catalog of cases from whatever source. I didn't try to glorify them or take them away. And it turned out that's been very useful, though, because it stimulated a lot of other people to pull these kind of details together. So it's not a big deal. The big deal is what we do with it from this point forward. There's going to be a lot more pieces of material to analyze, a lot more injuries to fix. I just don't know what to say further than that. It's a serious, but it shouldn't be a scary subject either, because we deal with it honestly, and the people don't have to be scared. You're not going to be carried away in the middle of the night because you looked at this or something, So many myths have gone around. There's a lot of entertaining stories, a lot of entertaining movies, and they do keep the subject moving, but they're not intended to be science documents.
That's a huge subject, and it's, it's an amazing subject. I wanted to ask our producer if there was anyone that had any questions, so that I'm not excluding anything, but he can let us know. Oh, okay. He said that he doesn't have anything specific. We've answered pretty much what other people were thinking. So that's a good thing. Have you got any other questions? We've got we're at an hour, but we have as much time really as we want to take.
Well, I'm interested in whether John has anything to share about his time at NASA. And whether there's anything he can share about maybe things he may have encountered there that confirmed his beliefs.
Well, it's not just NASA. It's a lot broader than that. You know, confirm my beliefs. No. At NASA, I was impressed how honest the people were that I worked with. No matter which part of the programs they were on, they were honest people, and so many were interested in this subject because they saw technology possibilities. It wasn't their job, though. And like I said earlier, our job in the space program on any given thing was focus on the space program. Don't dilute your attention. And Gene Kranz was the flight director for Apollo and others. And I got to know Gene because I had to report to him my McDonnell Douglas program manager hat supporting flight operations. And Gene was a tough worker.
This was the guy with the white vest in Apollo 13, right?
Oh, yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, he's the guy that got Apollo led back here, okay?
Yeah.
With, again, though, the people that had ideas along the way. And I was always so impressed with him because he did focus. And it made the team do that. And that's why it was successful in overwhelming odds against it. And that wasn't caused by an alien or anything else, Human failure of the products, that happens. And it happens every day, whether you're driving a car, flying an airplane, flying a spacecraft. And we have to recognize that and not mix that in with UFOs, because the UFO subject has plenty of data already itself, and it's going to get a lot more. And I hope that we can find our way to reach into new databases and new things to do. It's so important. And you mentioned Jacques Vallée. He's just one of the many that encourages that sort of thing, along with Dr. Kelleher and Bob Bigelow, and it just goes on and on and on. These people all were so blatantly honest with what they were doing. But they took a lot of flack because they didn't give somebody else money or something, I have so much respect for people that are willing, regardless of their position, to state their point and stick to it, not waver just because it's attacked. And that's what the MUFON team that we're all going to see every day that you deal with MUFON, the same thing. They stick to their focus. They stick to the honesty of it, and you can't ask for more. They're the nicest people out there. They're caring people, and that's why so many of them volunteer, because they care.
Yeah.
What do you think about things that are happening in science today and in society, like in the the anti-science movement, and in particular ideas like the flat Earth theory that seem to be coming back into vogue, and there seems to be sort of a rejection of science on the part of some of us. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The rejection of science to me is deplorable, but it's to be expected. If science can't give an immediate answer for one reason or another, they throw it out and they'll go with horseshoe wormer or something else, just to be poking fun at a little bit. But it's not going to get better until people can have education about how to look into things personally. They're just taking answers. So-and-so said this. They won't go themselves, or they won't have the capability possibly themselves to investigate personally, look into it. Don't take that kind of an answer.
What do you think the greatest amount of resistance to this is? either inside the government or culturally? Where does the greatest amount of resistance come from?
I think it's definitely cultural. I mean, the government is not a government in any country. It's made up of a conglomeration of lots and lots of people with lots and lots of reasons why they're doing it. Some of them for money, some of them for peace, some of them for you name it. And you shouldn't throw all of the stuff out just because you don't agree with that side of it. And that's where this gets to be scary now, is because if you don't really take apart these things like COVID and the various variants, and there are more variants coming, and some of the things are just looking today that I've had some issues with on the COVID thing, is that you always thought, well, to get better, I'm going to exercise. Well, some independent studies have shown that prolongs the problem. It doesn't kill you, but it prolongs the problem. So, there's a lot to be learned. We've only scratched the surface on that one, I think. And thank goodness there are people willing to work on it.
And it really just sort of emphasizes the importance of science.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Saying science is bad because they don't agree with your position is frightening, but it's always been that way.
I always find that entertaining because people, that they have this tendency to reject science, but they're frying an egg on their anti-stick pan while they heat it up over a gas stove with these burners that have been designed by engineers and material scientists. everything in their life basically relies upon some guy sitting, or some person sitting in a lab somewhere in front of a microscope or in front of a burner or whatever, figuring out the answers to all these questions just so they can do what they're doing at that moment.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So
And the flat earth thing you mentioned, I found that quite humorous, but it was serious for some of these people. And one thing I asked one of the guys I knew that was involved in that, said, well, when are you going to go to the edge and look over? Take a picture for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of ended the thing. But when you look at the things in space now, the photos and stuff we have, there's a lot of myths that go on of what's out there. And what's out there is probably going to be more surprising than what any of us ever thought. But one thing right now is the resources. Earth's going to run out of resources. And space is a place where it's going to be and where we're going to have to go. And you say, well, why would any alien do that? Well, maybe aliens are not flesh and blood like us. Maybe they're different kinds of things. And lots of scientists are addressing that right now. So, but maybe they are some flesh and blood too. So the little green man concept is fun, but it's more serious than that. But levity is one way you let off steam. And frustration is another way where you reject science or whatever. You say, no, it can't be. It's because you're frustrated. You can't get an answer. And you see your loved ones having problems from it. And you've got to get out there and do the work. And everybody has a little bit of capability, believe me. I mean, humans are smarter than anyone ever thought they would be. You don't have to have a PhD to be smart. There are lots of smart people in all walks of life.
Right.
You know what my dad said? My dad says that, you know what PhD spells?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, let me ask you this, John. What do you see in the future? What do you see in the future of humanity? Do you see us eventually making contact with these civilizations and becoming part of the greater galactic civilization, the greater universal civilization?
Good
I
question.
think when we recognize there are other civilizations out there and we find a way to communicate with them, yes, we would become a part of it if we survive our own atom bombs and the like, And everybody said, well, little green men will come and stop it. Well, we have the responsibility ourselves to stop it. And don't look to little green man. Just do good things and work with people. And we have there's always the threats of collisions of extraterrestrial bodies hitting Earth. And we only became several times later, we became aware of there was one coming by Earth a few hours before it happened, not months or weeks or years. And one of our big telescopes at Arecibo that was destroyed. Well, my step uncle was a rigger on that steelwork for the Arecibo telescope, and I felt sad for his sake that it was destroyed by the storm, and we have to do more.
Yes.
Wow.
I appreciate that, John.
Yes. Golly. Well, time is kind of getting away with us, but we did have one question. What did you do in APRO, and did you ever join NICAP?
No, I didn't join NICAP because at the time when I wanted to, NICAP wouldn't accept your joining it if you belonged to APRO, you know.
Oh.
And that was one thing that Walt wanted to correct. You can belong to anything you want to. Just say who you belong with, who you're working with. And that's why there was a UFO Research Coalition, a MUFON, FUFOR, and QFOS. And the three organizations worked together to investigate cases. And one of the things they did was the abductee monitoring project. And that never did fully get finished. But Tom Dooley, one of our long-term founding members, did all of the intake of the data from that. And he clearly collected the data, and then QFOS was going to do the analysis of the data. And Ron Switek was FUFOR then, and he worked with us the same way. So these organizations can work together just like any other science organizations can work together. They're not in competition with each other. That's so silly.
It is. It is. We're all in the same boat, going in the same direction.
Yeah, for some reason, everybody looks at their own research as proprietary when really, it belongs to humanity.
Right. Yeah. They're not taking it with them.
Everybody's got to make a buck.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line, isn't it?
But that's
in
the
this
way the
day and age.
world runs.
Greed. Or something like that. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, John. This has been amazing. And I don't want to cut us short at all. If there's anything you would like to, share with us, we still have maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Anything on your mind that you'd like to leave us with, like what you think the future of MUFON is, or, what's on your mind? As Facebook would say.
There's not a lot else I need to say because you people all understand it and you're all talking about it openly, what has to be done. And you got to be ready for the wild cards. And that's one of the reasons I went into the study of the future, was to find out how to forecast where to look, how to evaluate the data as it unrolls. And wild cards are the things that come up. And look it up on the internet. And see what a wild card is. It's the thing that changes the world each time. Atomic power was a wild card. Lots of other things were. But we're going to see wild cards that we've never seen before. And you can rest assured of that because the world, space, everything is not a constant. It's a continuing, evolving thing. And that's why I'm so pleased to see all our people working to try to help. Whether we make it or not, who knows? But we've given help to a lot of people already.
Yes.
Hope to a lot of people. And that's the thing to keep in mind. And praise each other for the good little things we do, not the bad things.
Yes, absolutely.
We all stumble, everybody does. Everybody has, from the Pope down, you might say, literally. And it gets criticized. But instead of criticizing, find something nice to praise. Praise the little things because they build into nice things and they help a lot of people.
Yeah, MUFON is an amazing think tank, and we're all working together. And, like Project Aquarius, bringing all this information together and sharing it. What a wonderful thing. I hope people will be inspired to support Project Aquarius with MUFON. And just thank you so much for your time with us today. And thank you, Richard,
thanks, John.
for being here.
I'm really honored that we got to spend some time together this afternoon. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate getting to do it because you folks are ones that I admire and love working with, and I hope other people will recognize that and do the same thing.
Yep.
Thanks, John.
I'll be here every month, and next month I'll have Sev Talk with us from MUFON. And in May, I have Barbara Sobani, and so I'm hoping that she'll be able to make that.
Great.
Oh, she is such a wonderful soul and such a good editor. We're really pleased. And she's been with MUFON her entire life. Was she born in 1969?
Yes.
So were we, and she's been along for the ride the whole way. So glad to have her, and I'm really looking forward to speak with her in May. And of course, that will always be on a Saturday, and it'll always be 2 p.m. Central Time. June is Irena Scott, and July is Steve Hudgens, and I'm so looking forward to talking with Steve. It's been a long time since I've had a chat with him. He's amazing. He's done so much for MUFON, just a real blessing to us all. But again, thank you, Richard, and thank you,
Certainly.
John. I hope you'll come back and join me sometime and be a guest on this show, United MUFON. So, yeah, thank you. Okay, well, y'all have a wonderful afternoon, and make the very best of it. This is our first meeting in the springtime, so it's starting to warm up. It's not too cold in my studio. You've heard me complain before. Don't forget about the Denver MUFON Symposium. Registration is open. It opened in February, so please make that date. And I look forward to seeing you there. And thanks for being with us today on this new format that we're doing on Facebook. I hope you join us again next month. Never stop looking up. Thank you. Thank you for coming.